In 1982, the logging industry nearly collapsed. Timber prices crashed. Half the mills shut down. Thousands of loggers lost everything. But the machines kept working. Because the ones that survived that decade weren't built to a budget. They were built to a standard. Iron so thick it laughed at impact. Engines so overbuilt they outlasted the companies that made them. 10 machines, 0 compromises. This is what real heavy iron looked like. Number 10. The Timberjack 450 grapple skidder. If you were logging in rugged terrain in the early 1980s, and you needed a machine that could drag massive logs out of places no sensible person would go, the Timberjack 450 was one of the machines you called on. Timberjack was founded in Woodstock, Ontario, by Wes Madill and Robert Simmons, two men who understood that logging demanded something fundamentally different from ordinary agriculture or construction equipment. Their machines were built around the concept of articulated four-wheel drive, all four wheels pulling. The machine able to twist and flex as it climbed hills and plowed through soft ground that would swallow anything less capable. The Timberjack 450, manufactured from 1975 through into the mid-1980s, was powered by a Caterpillar 328 diesel engine pumping out up to 140 horsepower. Now, 140 horsepower sounds modest by today's standards, but remember what this machine was doing with it. It was dragging trees, not trimmed logs, but whole trees with root balls and branches, up steep slopes and across terrain that looked like the surface of the moon after a rainstorm. The hydraulic system ran a closed-center design at 2500 psi, which gave the grapple or winch the power to securely lock onto massive timber without hydraulic fade. Tire options ranged from 23.1 by 26 to 24.5 by 32. Massive rubber that distributed the machine's weight and gave it traction on surfaces that ranged from loose shale to deep mud. What made the 450 truly tank-like was its power shift gearbox, a 3 or 4-speed transmission that let the operator keep moving under load without the agonizing process of stopping to shift. In the woods, momentum is survival, and the 450 kept momentum even when dragging loads that would have bogged down lesser machines completely. Timberjack was owned by Eaton Corporation through the 1960s, 70s, and into the early 1980s. Then in 1984, the company executed a leveraged buyout from Eaton to become an independent operation, a testament to the confidence the people running the brand had in their own machines. They knew what they had, and what they had was a skidder built like a tank. Number 9. The John Deere 540B skidder. John Deere has been building skidders for over half a century, and by the 1980s they had it down to a science. The 540B was a cable skidder, the kind of machine that loggers in the American South and Southeast depended on to pull timber out of pine plantations and hardwood bottoms. What separated John Deere from the competition during the 1980s wasn't just the machine. It was the combination of the machine and the financial support behind it. As one veteran logger put it, "It didn't matter how good a machine was if you couldn't afford to buy it." John Deere's credit programs made these machines accessible to smaller operators who couldn't write a check for $250,000 outright. But the 5040B earned its reputation on merit alone. It was powered by a John Deere diesel engine. The company has always manufactured its own power plants, which meant tighter quality control and better parts support than competitors who relied on third-party engines. The machine featured a rollover protection structure that was a genuine safety cage, not a formality. In an era when loggers were still regularly getting killed by falling timber, having real structural protection overhead was not a luxury. It was survival. The 540B weighed in at approximately 18,675 pounds, not as large as some of the machines on this list, but dense and low-slung in a way that gave it remarkable stability on side slopes. A factory grapple option made it far more efficient than pure cable skidders, allowing a single operator to grab multiple small stems at once and drag them to the landing in a single pass. The 1983 540B in particular became one of the most common skidders in the American South during the mid-decade recovery of the timber industry. After the brutal recession of the early 80s cleared out the weak competition, John Deere and Caterpillar dominated the market, and the 540B was one of the models that earned that dominance one load of timber at a time. Number 8. The Hydro Axe 311B Feller Buncher. The Hydro Axe story begins in the 1970s, when inventors Carroll Nelson and Len Vicina pioneered the first hydrostatic wheel-type feller buncher, a machine that adapted earlier land-clearing mowers for timber felling, allowing a single operator to cut down and bunch multiple trees without ever putting a chainsaw in hand. By the 1980s, Hydro Axe had refined the concept into brutal efficiency. The 311B, which was in production through 1985, ran a John Deere engine and rode on massive 23.1 by 26 tires. It featured a shear head, a heavy-duty hydraulic jaw that clamped around a tree trunk, sheared through it at the base with incredible force, and then held the felled tree in place while the operator repositioned to grab the next one. No dropping trees randomly, no choker setters running into hazard zones. Just controlled, mechanized felling at a pace that made hand cutting look like it was happening in slow motion. The hydrostatic drive was one of the defining features of the Hydro Axe lineup. Unlike machines with conventional transmissions, a hydrostatic drive gave the operator infinitely variable speed control, the ability to ease up to a tree at exactly the right pace, absorb the impact of the falling timber, and reverse smoothly without ever hunting for a gear. In dense stands of timber where precision mattered, this was a significant advantage. Operators working a 1985 Hydro Axe 311B could accumulate multiple stems in the shear head's arms before releasing them in a bunch, which is exactly where the buncher part of the name came from. A skidder could then come in, grab an entire bunch at once, and drag it to the landing in a single pass. The result was a dramatic increase in efficiency over the old cut-and-drag one-at-a-time method. The 311B was not a delicate machine. It was built to operate in the kind of brush and timber stands where the vegetation itself fought back, saplings and branches hammering the cab, logs rolling against the frame, and roots catching the tires on every pass. The structural integrity required to survive that environment day after day was staggering, and Hydro Axe delivered it in steel. Number 7. The Caterpillar 235 Log Loader. Caterpillar entered the hydraulic excavator market in the 1970s, and by the 1980s their machines were being adapted for logging work with increasing frequency. The CAT 235 was one of the company's flagship excavators of that era, and when fitted with a log grapple, it became a formidable loading machine at log landings across North America. What made the CAT 2035 stand apart from its competitors in the logging context was a structural integrity that the older generation of machines simply couldn't match. Unlike some competitors that had started out as modified steam shovels and retrofitted hydraulics onto outdated frames, the 2035 was designed as a hydraulic machine from the ground up. That meant the boom, the massive arm that reached out to grab logs, was engineered with the right geometry and material thickness to handle the punishing, repetitive side loads that log loading creates. As one industry observer noted, Even after 3 decades of use, the 23.5's boom didn't show the cracking and fracturing that plagued earlier generations of equipment. That's a remarkable testament to how overbuilt this machine was. The 235 ran Caterpillar's own diesel engine. The company had a long tradition of vertical integration that gave them control over the quality and reliability of every major component. The piloted hydraulic controls were state-of-the-art for their era, and while they lacked the fine-grained feedback of later systems, they gave the operator enough authority over the grapple to handle everything from delicate selective loading to the brute force work of clearing a landing. Cat's reputation in the Pacific Northwest logging industry was almost mythological by the 1980s. Loggers there had a simple philosophy: if Cat built it, it would last. The 235 in logging configuration did nothing to challenge that reputation. Number 6. Timberjack 2030D cable skidder. While the larger Timberjack models got a lot of attention, the 230D was the workhorse that kept smaller logging operations alive through the brutal years of the early 1980s recession and into the recovery that followed. The 230D was a cable skidder, a machine that deployed a steel cable winch to drag logs out of the forest. Cable skidders require human choker setters to wrap cables around individual logs before the machine can pull them in. It's labor-intensive, but it gives the operator extraordinary control over the logs being pulled, and it can reach into tight spots that a grapple machine cannot access. The 230D was typically powered by a Detroit Diesel 353 engine, a two-stroke diesel that was legendary among equipment operators of the era for its durability and its unmistakable sound. Detroit diesels of this period were almost indestructible if properly maintained. They ran hot and loud, smoked more than modern operators would tolerate, and kept working in conditions that would have stopped a lesser engine cold. The 1987 Timberjack 230 ran this engine in a machine weighing around 16,000 pounds, sitting on massive logging tires that provided the flotation needed to stay on top of soft ground that would swallow a truck. The power shift transmission let the operator keep the winch loaded and moving without the machine lunging or stalling as it crested a ridge with a full turn of logs behind it. What loggers loved about the 230D was its simplicity. It was largely built from generic, off-the-shelf components. Another deliberate design philosophy from Timberjack. When something broke in the woods, you could often fix it with parts from a farm supply store, rather than waiting 2 weeks for proprietary components to arrive. In remote operations, that philosophy was worth more than all the fancy engineering in the world. Number 5. The Madill 071 Tower Yarder. Now we're getting into a different category of machine entirely. The Madill 071 isn't a skidder or a fella buncher, it's a yarder. And if you've never seen one in action, prepare to have your mind completely rearranged. In coastal logging, particularly in British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest of the United States, the terrain is often so steep and so broken that wheeled or tracked machines simply cannot operate on it. The slopes are too severe, the ground too unstable, the timber too far below accessible roads. The solution that the logging industry developed over decades was the cable yarder, a massive self-propelled machine that plants itself at a landing, erects a tower, and strings cables thousands of feet down a mountainside to retrieve logs by pulling them through the air. The Madill 071 was one of the most iconic yarders ever built. It rides on tank-like crawler tracks and is powered by a Detroit 8V71 diesel or similar engine, a massive V8 two-stroke that generated tremendous torque for the drums that wound in the main line and haulback cables. The machine carries multiple guy lines that anchor it to the surrounding timber like a ship dropping anchors in a storm. Once set up, It becomes an immovable anchor point from which enormous loads of timber can be brought in from areas that would be completely inaccessible by any other means. Units from 1985 have been documented with Cummins Big Cam 3 motors rebuilt and still working in active logging operations decades later. That's not just durability. That's legendary construction. The Zoro 7-1 runs a crew, a yarder engineer in the cab controlling the drums, a rigging crew setting chokers down in the unit, and a chaser at the landing releasing logs as they arrive. It's a coordinated operation, and the Madill Zoro 7-1 is the mechanical heart of it. When you see a tower yarder pulling a turn of logs up a 60-degree slope with those cables going taut and the drums screaming, you understand immediately that this machine is in a class by itself. Number 4. The Hydro-Axe 511B Feller Buncher. Stepping up from the 311B, the 511B represented Hydro-Axe's move into heavier timber applications. While the 311B was built for smaller pulpwood operations, the 511B was designed to tackle larger diameter trees in commercial timber harvesting, and it brought significantly more machine to the task. The 511B featured a Cummins diesel engine paired with a hydrostatic drive, the combination that Hydro-Axe had built its reputation on. But the 511B's head options expanded the machine's versatility considerably. Operators could run a shear head for clean, low-damage felling, or swap in a disc saw head, the revolutionary cutting technology that John Koehring introduced at Koehring-Waterous in the early 1980s, which allowed continuous cutting at faster speeds with reduced wood splintering compared to shear heads. The four-wheel drive system on the 511B put power to all 4 massive tires simultaneously, which was critical in the kind of terrain where these machines worked. Logging units weren't level, dry, and neatly groomed. They were uneven, muddy, root-crossed nightmares where a moment of lost traction could mean a machine sliding sideways down a hill. The 511B's all-wheel drive and low center of gravity kept it upright and moving when lesser machines would have been winched out by a rescue crew. One-owner machines from this era have been documented with nearly 11,000 hours on the frame, a testament to what Hydro-Axe built into these machines when maintained properly. The 511B was essentially tireless. It would work until the operator shut it down and start again the next morning without complaint. Number 3. The Koehring-Waterous Feller Buncher. Koehring-Waterous occupies a unique place in logging history, and the 1980s were arguably their most important decade. It was John Koehring at Koehring-Waterous who invented and introduced the disc saw head for feller bunchers, and that innovation fundamentally changed how the industry operated. Before the disc saw, feller buncher heads used hydraulic shears, powerful clamps that squeezed through a tree trunk with brute force. Shear heads worked well on smaller diameter trees, particularly in pulpwood operations, but they were slow. They sometimes split the wood in ways that reduced its value, and they struggled with larger timber. The disc saw changed all of that. A disc saw head uses a large rotating steel disc, similar conceptually to an enormous circular saw blade, to cut through a tree trunk in a fraction of the time a shear head required. The cut was clean and precise, minimizing wood damage and improving lumber recovery. The machine didn't need to pause to accumulate pressure. The saw was always spinning, always ready. You drove the head into the tree, the disc cut through, and you moved on. The result was dramatically higher productivity per machine hour. Koehring-Waterous built the carriers for these machines as rugged as the heads they carried. The tracked feller buncher platforms of this era featured heavy steel undercarriages, powerful crawler systems, and operator cabs that, while primitive by modern standards, provided meaningful protection from the falling debris and occasional tree strikes that were an inescapable part of the work. The introduction of the disc saw head in the early 1980s set the foundation for every modern feller buncher in use today. Every time you see a tracked harvester drop a massive tree in seconds, you're looking at a technology lineage that runs straight back to Koehring-Waterous and the 1980s. Number 2. The John Deere 648D Grapple Skidder. The John Deere 648 series represents one of the most successful lines of logging equipment ever produced, and the D-series machines of the late 1980s and early 1990s stand as the peak of that era's engineering. The 648D was a grapple skidder. No choker setters, no cables, just a massive hydraulic grapple that could grab multiple logs or whole trees simultaneously and drag them to the landing. The machine weighed approximately 24,440 pounds and was powered by John Deere's own 6-cylinder diesel engine, which was known for durability and for being serviceable by Deere's extensive dealer network anywhere in North America. The 648D rode on 28L26 tires, massive, wide agricultural-style rubber that gave the machine tremendous flotation on soft ground and grip on wet slopes. The dual-arch grapple configuration, available with a winch for additional reach, allowed the operator to load and move timber that would have taken a crew of men with chainsaws and cables hours to accomplish in a single pass. What distinguished the 648D from competitors was John Deere's obsessive attention to axle design. The heavy-duty axles in this machine were engineered for forest conditions specifically, not adapted from agricultural or construction equipment, but purpose-built to handle the continuous shock loads that skidding generates when a machine is pulling tons of timber over roots, stumps, and rocks at operating speeds. Operators who worked 648Ds in the late 1980s frequently report running them to frame hours in the mid-teens of thousands, 16,000 hours, before the machines required major structural work. For context, many modern passenger vehicles are considered end-of-life at 200,000 miles, or 12 to 15 years. These machines were built to last twice or 3 times as long, under conditions incomparably more brutal than highway driving. The 648 line was so successful that John Deere continued developing it through multiple generations, the EG, HL, and L2 series, all the way to the present day. But old-timers who worked the D-series machines will tell you that was when they built them the right way. Number 1. The Madill 3000C log loader and the Breda Madill legacy. At the very top of our list, we land on a machine that truly earns the description "built like a tank" in almost literal terms. Madill Equipment, based in British Columbia, has been building logging machinery that pushes the limits of size and capability for decades. The tracked log loaders that Madill produced during the 1980s and the machines that followed them directly are among the most massively built pieces of equipment the forestry industry has ever seen. The modern Madill 3000C, the direct descendant of the machines they were building in the 1980s, develops 325 horsepower, weighs 100,000 pounds, and has a lifting capacity approaching 24 tons at 20 feet of reach. But the roots of that machine were planted firmly in the 1980s. The Madill 071 Yarder had already established the brand's identity. Machines that don't compromise, machines that are engineered for the worst conditions the coastal logging industry can throw at them, which means steep slopes, enormous old-growth timber, high rainfall, and no room for mechanical failure. The Madill tracked log loaders of the 1980s brought that same philosophy to the landing, a machine that could pick up enormous loads of raw logs, and swing them onto waiting trucks with precision and speed. Machines built on undercarriages heavy enough to stay stable while lifting loads that would tip most equipment sideways. The tracks themselves were wider and more heavily reinforced than anything you'd find on a conventional construction excavator of the same era. Madill's engineering philosophy during this period was straightforward. If there was any doubt about whether a component could handle the load, make it stronger. The resulting machines were heavier than strictly necessary, cost more to build than competitors might have been comfortable with, and were significantly harder to transport between sites. But they didn't break, and in an industry where a machine breakdown on a remote hillside could cost thousands of dollars per hour in lost production and potentially strand a crew, not breaking was the most valuable feature a machine could have. The brand became synonymous with dependability in cable logging, a reputation that Madill built over decades by consistently delivering machines that simply did not give up. When you talk to veteran cable logging operators from the Pacific Northwest or British Columbia, the name Madill comes up over and over again, always with the same expression: respect. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.